Hello and welcome to my Flat Earth video. In this video, we're going to be looking at one main question. Is the Earth flat? I'll be trying to scientifically analyse this by conducting some experiments. The experiments were conducted over 3 days. So here you can see the 3 days and the things which I have found on each day. So if we go through them one by one, on day 1 I saw Ailsa Craig and the cargo ship number 1. On day 2 I saw, or rather recorded, cargo ship number 2, and on day 3 I recorded, without my knowledge, I recorded Ailsa Craig, I recorded a sail ship from 3 different altitudes, and the cargo ship number 3, which is moving away from me. And all that conclusions is therefore is just to show that at the end I'll be stating my conclusions. So without any further ado, we'll get straight into it, and I hope you enjoy. So, day 1, Ailsa Craig and the cargo ship number 1. So this here is just to show the distances which are involved. So this is for Ailsa Craig, and we can see the distance is 51 miles, and that's from Strawn Point all the way down to Ailsa Craig. So what is Ailsa Craig? This is Ailsa Craig. It's a volcanic plug, apparently, according to Wikipedia. It's just off the Ayrshire coast, and it is 1,109 feet tall. So you can see that the first altitude I'll be dealing with is 53 meters. Now that's up at the top left. You can see where I was standing. That's on that white bit at the junction. So this here is the second altitude. It's from just on the road. Now Google Earth doesn't get an extremely accurate value of the actual height, but it's approximately 7 meters. So that means that the first altitude is approximately 170 feet. And the second altitude is approximately 30 feet. I've said 32, just for the sake of argument. And that 1.5 is the height of the camera on the tripod. Now, I've taken a higher estimate for this, but it doesn't actually matter, because this is actually going to help the flat earthers slightly when it comes to the calculations. So, going from the highest to the lowest, we can see from the Earth curve calculator on GitHub that from 170 feet, you're going to be getting approximately 830 feet missing behind the curve of the Earth. That is, if the Earth is a sphere of approximately 6,371 kilometers in radius. Now, as a result of what we've already seen, we can now deduce that we should be getting approximately 276 feet of Ailsa Craig visible from the higher altitude, and that is increasing slightly as a result of atmospheric refraction, which bends things towards normal, so it would make something behind a curve appear more than if there were no atmospheric refraction occurring. So what do we actually see? So first off, we have a video, because I know flat earthers love videos, but it's not the best proof. The photos actually work far better, but here it is anyway. So it's difficult to make out, but you might be able to see there, just to the left of that ship, you can see Ailsa Craig peeking over the horizon. So now for the photos, which are far better in showing Ailsa Craig. So you can see here, you can see that same ship on the right, and there's Ailsa Craig. Again, ship on the right, Ailsa Craig. This one here, you can see I turned down the brightness on the camera just to be able to see it a bit better. Again, except less zoom. And again, but with far more zoom. Digital. So this is the one I'll be working with the most, because it's definitely the best photograph of it. You can clearly see certain points on Ailsa Craig, which I'll just show now. So you can see there are 2 defined points. You can go back and pause the video if you wish. There's a slight dip, then upwards on the left hand side, and on the right hand side there's a slight point halfway up. Now this can be compared with the Ailsa Craig here, thanks to Stuart Nimmo, who I kind of stole this photograph from, thanks Daily Mail. Now you'll notice this photograph is not taken from the same angle, but it's actually irrelevant, because as I'll show here, it's the same reference point that I'm looking at in the next photograph, as if it were from that same angle as this photograph here. And here you can see the different heights, so feel free to go back and pause it, have a look, see if you agree with this analysis. But from what I saw, it certainly appears like it's this top 41 pixels which we're seeing, and it's a slight upwards on the left hand side, which really allows me to say that and that is 41 pixels of this photo, which is 26.6% of Ailsa Craig, if it scales up correctly, which is 295 feet, which is fairly close to the expected 276 feet that we would expect to see as a result of the Earth's curve. Now, as I mentioned before, atmospheric refraction will act slightly, and that, which is approximately 10% higher than we would expect to see, is fairly consistent with what you would expect to get from atmospheric refraction in the afternoon, from what I've researched online. So now for the important part, a comparison with what we should see from the shore. So, as we saw before, I was standing at about 32 feet when I factor in the height of the camera. So, as we can see here, we should be expecting to see 1,312.9 missing feet. And if you remember the height of Ailsa Craig, that is about 200 feet higher, so we should not be seeing any of Ailsa Craig. It would be feasible for atmospheric refraction to bring Ailsa Craig back into view, but there wouldn't exactly be very much to see of Ailsa Craig, and it would have to be a lot of atmospheric refraction to bring it back into view. So what do we actually see in reality? And as you can see, I've said that the first clip is a raw clip, so that people can't accuse me of editing it to miss out when perhaps see Ailsa Craig. It's rather amateurish, as you can see, but it does the job. So as you can see from the pan, there's no Ailsa Craig there. You can't see anything of Ailsa Craig. So now we'll get into the photographs. So this photograph here was taken at 1731, and you can see there's no Ailsa Craig there. That's where you'd expect to see Ailsa Craig, give or take. But what we do see is that ship, and we'll come back to that because that is cargo ship number 1. Another photograph taken at 1731, but you can't see anything in this one. And one more photograph taken at 1731 again, and in this one you can again see this cargo ship, and I will come back to that, but you can see there's a certain part missing of that cargo ship. Come back to it right now, because I saw this when I checked it in the camera, and I thought, wow, look at that cargo ship, half of the bottom of it's missing. So I drove back up to the top, and I took another photograph, and this is the photo I took. So you'll see it zooms in, and you can see that there's a fairly hefty chunk of that cargo ship, approximately 60% from the bottom, is missing, and there's Ailsa Craig right behind it, and that whole bottom hull is missing. So you can see here it is on the top. You can see the first photograph. It's the best photograph I have of the top of the ship, and the bottom you can see that photograph cropped just so that it's approximately the same size, and you can see that it's a good 60-70% of that ship is missing. Now there's no explanation of why this would happen other than a very large wave on the Flat Earth model, and you can tell it's not a very large wave because it can be seen in several photos which are taken about 20 seconds apart, and if it was a wave then you wouldn't expect to see it in every single photo. So my question for flat earthers is, without posting a video as evidence, which I know you all love to do, where is the rest of that cargo ship? So day 2 and cargo ship number 2. So this is to show both the position of me and the position of the ship. So I was just a bit south of Ardentiny, in where the yellow line goes to, and the ship is up at Finnert oil terminal, which is an oil terminal for cargo ships. And as you can see, this distance is 6.5 miles. Now this is stretching the limits of my camera when it comes to zoom, so this was full optical and full digital zoom. So now this first photograph was taken at the shoreline. It was taken about 2 feet above the water, and you can see that ship up there is what's called the Bro Developer. Now I'm not kidding, feel free to Google that. That is the ship that was done via Ship AIS to show which ship it was. Now aside from an awesome name, it's also a pretty big ship, and it obviously comes up the River Clyde quite often, because googling Bro Developer brings up a lot of entries which revolve around the River Clyde. So here's the photograph again, and I'm just going to contrast it with a photograph that was taken approximately 10 or 12 feet up. So there it is. Fortunately, I actually filmed some proof for this, and for the proof for the height and proof for the time. So here, enjoy. So that's the camera set up beside the car. Up here, it's a rough estimate of maybe 10 feet for the wall, and then for the camera itself it's another it's about another 5.5 feet for the camera. So in total we're looking at maybe 16-17 feet, and so the time is 4:06 or 16:06. The time on the camera appears to be wrong ever so slightly, but that's relevant because the ship is not moving. Now, you might have missed that beforehand, but I've adjusted this photograph because I took it on a slight angle with the tripod because I'm a bit silly, and I'm going to flash between the two and see if you can see a slight difference between them. Do you see that? Now, the only difference here is the altitude from which they were taken, and you can see on this second one there is a significant amount more visible. For example, a significant portion of that pier is hidden behind the curve, which I'll just show now. So there, you can see the whole bottom portion of that pier is gone, and here. So yes, this is again hidden ships from the bottom up, so I'd like them to explain that. Now, unlike the last one, I have fairly good proof that this is not a big wave, and that is because I took about a 2-minute or 3-minute clip of that ship, and I'm gonna squeeze it into about 20 seconds here, and you'll be able to see, if it were a big wave, this is not what you'd be seeing. You would be seeing a large wave at the bottom, and the pier would be reappearing and things like that, and that's not what we actually see here. I'll just cut this here because I think you get the point. That is clearly not a big wave that I've cherry picked, because it would show what we would expect to see if there were a curve. That is actually a curve. Day 3, Ailsa Craig, sail ship and cargo ship number 3. First of all, an unintentional spotting of Ailsa Craig. Now, this has no comparison, unfortunately, but it's just to show you, again, Ailsa Craig from the top altitude, and it's approximately the same amount visible. Now, this is fairly telling. This is a sail ship from 3 different heights. So height 1 is the surface. This was taken at 11:46, and you can see there's quite a bit of that sail ship missing. You may have remembered the sail ship from just before, and yeah, all 3 of these photos show a significant amount of the sail ship missing. Height 2 is from the road, which is again approximately 30 feet or so. You can see there's a bit missing, but you see where the sail ends at the bottom. So height 3, this is back from a Strone, 170 feet, and wow, there's the rest of it. Now ignore it's facing a different direction, because that's irrelevant. You may have noticed that the reason it's at a different angle is because it was taken 10 minutes prior, approximately, to the other photos. And just take a look at what you can now see in comparison to those past 2 photographs, which I'll just show now. So now I'll just compare the 3 heights one by one. So you can see there, from the water's edge, now from the road, and finally from up at 170 feet. So here in reverse order I have the 3 photographs, and you can see the relative amount which is missing in each photo. So we can easily deduce from this that it seems to be that from a lower altitude more is missing. Now, I have a reasonable expectation of why this is, but feel free to answer that with the assumption of a flat earth. So, cargo ship number 3. Now, this experiment was conducted on a ship that was moving away from me, and I checked that was ship AIS before I took the photographs, and it was moving away from me south at about 10 knots, and I can't for the life of me remember if it was a Bro developer, but I believe it could have actually been. But anyhow, here it is. So at 10:53 I took this specific photograph showing about half of the ship missing, and then at 11:01 I took this photograph which shows about 80 to 90% of the ship missing. Now the only difference between these two photographs was time, so I'll let you have your own conclusions about what you think happened to that ship. So, fortunately or otherwise, we are now at the end of the video. So here I'll state my conclusions and you can assess in the comments whether you think they are correct, reasonable or otherwise. And if you have any criticisms of it, please make sure it's constructive criticism, assess what I've said and respond to it. So first off, my experiments from day 1. From a higher altitude, I was able to see Ailsa Craig. From a lower altitude, I wasn't. From that, it's logical to conclude that it was hidden behind the curve. There is no other phenomenon which would cause this to happen. If you believe I am wrong in stating that, please explain why in the comments. The comments are an open forum and I won't be deleting any comments. I found that from a lower altitude, a ship that was fairly far away had a significant amount missing from the bottom of it. When I went to a higher altitude, this reappeared. The only logical conclusion I can take from this is that it was also hidden behind the curve. I conceded it was possible that there was actually a large wave, but I think this is unlikely, given the fact that I have at least 3 photographs showing this ship hidden behind the curve. If it were a large wave, it would be unlikely the observations would be this consistent. So now for my results from day 2. I found that from a higher altitude you could see far more of a ship and the pier. Now the only logical explanation for this is that there's a curve in the way, and I'm fairly certain of this because that video that I took clearly shows that there's not a large wave that is moving, and I did not cherry pick a specific photograph which shows the conclusion I would like. So finally, my findings for day 3. I found that at lower altitudes, the bottom of ships were missing. I also found that as you were lower relative to the ship, there was more of the bottom of the ship missing. As I had a repetition, it's immensely unlikely that this was caused by waves. So the only conclusion I can draw is that it was caused by the curve of the Earth. And finally, I observed a ship that was moving away from me, and I found that as it became further away, more of it was hidden behind the curve. Now while there are other explanations which could account for this phenomenon, none of them are consistent with the flat Earth. Which leads me to my final conclusion. The Earth is round. None of the theories that flatties throw out adequately explain what can be observed simply by anyone near the sea. As such, the only conclusion that I can come to is that the Earth is round, and what I found in these experiments are merely the effects of that. Sorry flatties, but that which you believe in is more of a delusion than that which you claim the globe Earth theory is. I'm really sorry. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave constructive criticism in the comments, it would be welcomed.